it's a totally different picture, because we have heard in the past the four talks. It's more about the physical side of how urban areas are growing and what effort Virginia is doing to bring together people and trying to, change things around grassroots level and up to the top levels. But what we've understood even from the plenary talk yesterday is about the domino effect, the compound effect. So now we are realizing that it's not just publishing papers, which we always do and we are supposed to do because we are paid to do that. The other thing is, it's not just coming up with numbers. We understand cities are hotter. We understand there's difference and there's rainfall anomalies happening all around. But then how do we communicate that with the common people? Do they understand? Do the stakeholders, practitioners, do the mayors understand? No, not all the city mayors do understand. They do not. And especially, again, I'm going on hammering on the small and medium-sized cities, but people there, that is not their priority. So it's very important that we communicate. And this particular study, this was conducted by my PhD student. I mean, she's already graduated and she's working for Houston City, Megha Shrestha. And again, I would just present a chunk of her research, not the whole bit, because, PhDs are like 150 pages, not possible to present in 15 minutes. So let me move on. Did we go on? Did it freeze? Yeah, okay, thanks. So let me continue with a little background, like what sustainability is. And again, in the previous talks, we didn't talk about this big thing. It's a beast in itself, this whole word sustainability. We are always using it. We are very aspirational that we have to be very sustainable. But do we understand? It's very difficult to understand. And also, I'll a little bit explain on the UN SDGs. The UN SDGs, which probably most of you know. And, it's something which again, it's very aspirational. Most of the countries are striving to follow up the SDGs, and even cities are trying to we have to follow these SDG 17. There are 17 SDGs, which will be the next click. So, but again, going back to sustainability, there are these three pillars: environment and community and economy, which three together consist of sustainability. If we have a balance between these three, then only we can declare that this particular city or this particular institution, whichever entity, is sustainable, right? So these three have to work in sync together to make anything declare itself as sustainable. Then the 17, which again, as I said, you're aware of, is 17 SDGs, which even Dr. Alexander Baklanov, he mentioned, and so that's something which most of the countries are wanting to do. And then we have ECLI, another group, which mostly deals with small and medium-sized cities. They are also trying to encourage and entice small and medium-sized cities to follow and try to assess and gather data to work and try to see if they can come up with these, follow up or come up to the level of SDGs. So a little bit more, of course, we know that big cities exist, 33, 36, mega cities, and it's supposed to grow, and, a lot of natural surfaces being changed into concrete, but it's not just happening in big cities, it's happening everywhere. Just like Shubham just now said, that the 30% growth in concrete area. Similarly, what we found for Alabama cities, we did it for 10 cities. There were some of the cities were growing, say around 4 times more what it was 28 years back. So it's not just New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta or New Delhi growing or Shanghai. It's all cities around where people are moving in. So it very well fits in with the migration, with the heat, with flooding, and also the reason why we need to have climate centers like Virginia is planning for. So this is the US, some data from the US, if others, because others are not familiar with it, that in 2018, there were around 19,495 incorporated cities, towns, and villages in the United States, of which around 15,000 of these were under 5,000 population, which is nothing. I originally come from India, so 5,000 population is nothing. Just a small little village. But these were cities actually, right? So, and when we think of cities, they are bubbles of concrete. It's not like it's just green area and there's people having huts there. No, they are bubbles of concrete there. Then 310 cities are considered at least medium cities, a population of 100,000 or more. So this is a scenario in the US where we have many cities which are considered medium and small, but they do contribute. They have their own urban heat island, which we found even in case of Alabama, small city but have its own urban heat island, right? So for example, I come from, let me go to the next slide probably. So bottom right-hand side, that's Auburn, where I come from, my university, and that has a 3.4 to 4.2 degrees Fahrenheit urban heat island intensity on a generic summer day. So even just its population is around 70,000, nothing. It's very small, right? So that's what we're trying to get at. The magnitude of problems may not be as big as the bigger cities, but they exist. They are there, and are we addressing them or not? Now, in this study, we began with Southeast US because it's predicted that by 2030 is going to be one of the most growing areas in the US. And we narrowed it down to Alabama, which is the state I come from, and then Auburn, where Auburn University is hosted or it's placed. Now, as we were discussing, like my lab, we call it Urban Prism, and then again, there was a QR code which I forgot mentioning, but anyway, if you want to know what my lab does, there's tons of QR codes to look through the slides later on. So we were thinking, what could be the solutions to small and medium-sized cities? What could we try and do, like, to make a difference? And then we thought the first one should be trying to involve people. They're always missing in our discussions when we're doing all sorts of research. We really don't think about the common people. Do they want something? Do they really want a tall building? Or do they really want those ugly looking gray buildings right in the center of a city? Or do they really want beautiful, the ones you see in Europe, like paintings and flowers or something, like huge murals? Why not? Why don't we ask the common people, citizens? So citizens' involvement and engagement is very important if we have to go towards the sustainable development goals and try to be in agreement with them. Next one is physical change monitoring. Now, we are common people. We do need to see the tables and the numbers and the charts. Without that, we are not convinced. Just talking and us coming and giving big lectures will not help. So physical monitoring is also important, just to show them what is happening, like land use, land cover change, or heat, what's happening with the heat. And the third one is data visualization. So a picture equals 1,000 words. So of course, if we come up with those bright and beautiful, heat pictures and say, hey, your locality is the one which is very hot than the other one, that is actually going to make a difference, and it's going to put a dent in your thought process so that you think next time when you go to another urban area. So these three things we thought could be a very good solution towards sustainability when we have to declare a city, a neighborhood, or a locality, or whichever entity as sustainable. Now, in this talk, I'm just going to refer to the left, which is mostly on citizens' engagement, and if time permits, then data visualization. But the physical change monitoring, it's already published. It's on these 10 cities of Alabama, which are, again, small to medium. None of them are large cities, but like I said, we saw that they were, few of the cities were growing like 5 times more as it was 28 years before. And so if it's published, so if you want to read the paper, it's there, and you can Google and find it out. And so just to let you know that the citizen engagement, the survey which we did, we mostly continued with survey discussion and surveying of people. It was more of for Southeast USA. And for the physical monitoring, it was Alabama as a state. And then when we went into data visualizations, then we narrowed it down to just Auburn City. So let me tell you something about the survey discussion. Now, next slide is going to be very crowded, and I don't want you to follow it, but just telling you what the process was. So the left-hand side is actually like we came up with the questionnaire, and in surveys, if anyone is aware and has done surveys, you have to really get validated questions to have into a survey. You just can't randomly ask questions whatever you want, right? So you have to have them validated, or you have to get them from some validated publication already. So they were validated questions, and then they sent out to different people in Auburn, Opelika, the Lee County area, which is where the county named for Auburn, and then also to Southeast US. They collected the data, and then on the right-hand side is all the different kind of statistical techniques we use, the tools we use to analyze the survey results, which is also very important at the end. The methods first is surveys. We did a precursor survey. We began with 50, and then we just broadened up to 250 people. So the first survey was on, what we did is we sent out some questionnaire, and we had these 17 SDGs, and we actually asked them to rank them. So these are common people who do not know what SDGs are. So we had to first educate them what SDGs are, and then we said, hey, these are 17. Which ones do you think you would like to, rank as your most number one priority? What would you like to see? And I was expecting all to say, oh, number 11, which is like, cities, but none of them. It was not the cities at all. It was all different, which I'm going to show you later. And after the survey was done, then we sent it out using Mechanical Turk, and I think I have all of this. So yeah, okay, these were the 7, which I'm going to show you in a much more bigger screen in the next slide. We used Qualtrics, which is generic way of doing surveys, and then we use this Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is another way of just, if you want many people to take up a survey, you can use this Amazon Mechanical Turk. It's a very easy one, so and no one has used it and want to do surveys, this is a good tool to use. And then a lot of R programming and Jamovi was used to analyze the data, the survey data. So this is what those people, the first 250 to 270 people, they chose as the first top priority of those 17 SDGs. And they are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and decent work and economic growth. So these are people, common people in Alabama, who think that these are their priorities. So that's why we started working on them, on these particular ones. Now, the surveys. So how do we do surveys and what do we ask them? So what we wanted to do is we wanted to see how much do they understand sustainability? Do they understand what's going on? What is their perception? What is their involvement with the word sustainability or sustainable ways of living? So there were certain questions. They were all put into these categories. And the first one, the criteria were knowledge, concern, intent, intended behavior if they were putting in action, then perception, and one other one was just no scale if they really are not even bothered about it. And then the main one, which went out to around 1,000 people responded to the Mechanical Turk. In that one was more on awareness and how familiar with they were, concern, urgency, perception, behavior, involvement, and intended behavior or engagement. So how much they're putting into action. Now, these are some of the statistical tools we used. So I don't want to really, want you to go deep into these, but these are the ones which is multi-group confirmatory fact analyses and structural equation modeling, which mostly Megha did. So I'm not a person who's really, if you ask questions, I can go in and talk to you about the statistics. But I was there analyzing with her, and it was really phenomenal the way these statistical techniques were used, and they could help in analyzing all the plethora of data we actually got from the surveys. They were huge, and they were very much abstract data. So now, getting to some of the results. The first one on the left-hand side, what you see is based on income level. So what we saw is that if you look at the boxes, the ones which are in positive, those ones are actually showing that low income scored higher than high income, and vice versa. So if it's positive, then it's low income who is higher than high income, and it's negative, which means higher income people are doing better than the low income. So which means that the higher income people were actually much more aware, were much more familiar. They knew more about sustainability and what was going on in this whole spectrum of things. The lower income people were not really bothered about that. The other one, if you look on the right-hand side, is females were scored much more higher than males. And conservative. Now, coming to the US scenario, like I was saying, so we are politically very divided on climate change and sustainability. So conservative is liberals and conservatives. So conservatives are the one which here they scored pretty much high on awareness. They were familiar with it. They were concerned and they knew that the urgency was there. But when it came to actionable items, they did not bother much. That was more of the liberals who were literally going out and taking and going to the street fighting for causes, which the conservatives were not doing. They don't care for that, but they are very much, they understand the urgency of it. So this is where the reason why we have done this research is to understand how people in US are divided and what their understanding of sustainability is. Do they really understand what this is, or is just a completely blank slate for them or not? Very interesting thing which we found here is that the people who were aware, they were pretty much involved. If you look to the extreme, right-hand side, so the much more significant correlationship between the familiarity and the involvement. And even they also had a very good intended, they were more into recycling, they were more into propagating, they're going out, they are getting voting, and they're talking to their, their representatives and people. That was what they had written out in the survey. So they are much more active. But in some cases, which was for the richer people, for the people who had more money, the awareness, and they were more aware and familiar, but they were not doing the intended behavior. You can see the negative correlationship between both of them. So this is what overall what we found. Now, what I will do is quickly I'll jump into the visual part of it. And how am I going with time? Is it like 1 minute left or so, right? Okay. So what we did is when we got these 7 SDGs which were important for them, and then we assessed, we understood if they were really bothered or they were understanding how familiar they were, if they were caring about them. Then we thought, hey, what's happening with Auburn? Is Auburn, the mayor or the stakeholders or the people who are in the office, are they really looking or they know about this? So we started communicating with them. And we understood that they have a lot of data, but everything is in the dark room. They never use them. Nothing is coming out visually, or common people never use them, right? And so then we connected with them and we started working with them. And that's where this app software came in. And we said, okay, we're going to create this app for you. So the UN SDG has an open version, where if you want, you can plug in your data and you can assess if your city is doing at what level, if it's good or bad, if it's really doing well with all the parameters or not doing good with the parameters. So in this case, let me quickly go on to the data. So what we did was this huge amount of data we looked into, and this actually Megha did over 1 year, looked at the Auburn city website. And again, remember, this is not a big city. This is not like like Austin or Dallas or big cities where people are there dedicated to do this work. There is just one person, like, one planner or maybe mayor doesn't even care. So it's very difficult to gather the data and put them into it. And they did not really, first they were very resistant, and then they kind of softened onto it and say, okay, you can do it for us and we probably can use it. So all this data was put into Excel sheet, and then that was pumped into this, the open UN SDG web page, where you can, like I said, you can put in the data, and a lot of programming was done, and languages, and then the GitHub was used to kind of, put this up. And here again, this is the website which was built for Auburn City. And it was Auburn City for Sustainable Development Goal Indicators. So we have all the indicators there. We have most of the data inside. For example, and I can show you, if you want, you can, again, there's a QR code. If you want, you can use that and see what it has. And I can quickly pull it up. Just a minute. Anyway, yeah, I think this is going to. So this is how it looks. So just before I stop here, let me just click on no poverty. It's not sharing? Oh, sorry. Anyway, while he's pulling it up, I think I'll end here. But anyway, so ultimately I want to conclude is that, these infrastructure or these kind of things are not existing in these small, really small cities. And I know it's not existing even in other parts of the world, which I have experienced with India. They don't have it there. So it's very important that we start looking up and start working with these small and medium-sized cities and put them together and try to do something good and hopefully prepare them, make them much more resilient and much more prepared for what's coming their way when it comes to extreme weather events or climate change. Thank you. It's okay.
Okay,